Hello and welcome to my brand new YouTube channel, The Reasoned Heretic. Why have I started a YouTube channel? Well, I suppose I have a growing frustration with the world all around me. I have a great deal to say from my experiences, my observation, my accumulated knowledge from my former work, my travels, and my various interactions with many different types of people over the years. But at the same time, I feel that the doors to helping others, that I can help others by sharing my knowledge, are closed all around me, and I don't possess the key to open them. And I'll go into why that is as well, and why I feel that is during the course of my forthcoming videos. But first of all, why have I chosen the title, The Reasoned Heretic? Well, I suppose first of all, I'm logical, or I try to be. I'm interested particularly in reasoned solutions to increasingly challenging times. And I predicate arriving at those solutions on evidence-based, healthy skepticism and analysis. So I suppose I could have chosen Rational Heretic as the title of the channel, but well, first of all, the meter isn't quite right. It's a little bit quicker, 5 syllables rather than 6 syllables with Reasoned Heretic. But more to the point, irrationality refers to the act of exercising reason, while reason is the ability to choose appropriate means to achieve a desired end. And so I suppose Reasoned Heretic is therefore more direct than Rational Heretic. And I'm more concerned with positive outcomes than the process of reason itself. And then secondly, while I am an atheist, not only of religion, but as a natural skeptic and also I'm an atheist of cult ideas, hence I'm a heretic. Faith is counterfactual to empiricism and hence irrational. But I reject that there is no place for faith. I think faith is necessary, or can be very helpful and very a very positive thing for many people. So indeed, may be essential to well-being and motivation, arguably. And certainly without faith, there would be no risk-taking and therefore no growth, personal growth, economic growth, progress. So while faith is thus irrational by definition, it can be also nevertheless reasonable and reasoned. So for all those reasons, I sort of arrived at Reasoned Heretic. What am I going to be presenting? What am I going to be talking about in my videos? Well, as I say, I have a lot, I feel, to say from my experiences and interactions, and that's really what sort of motivated me to come here to start this. A lot of people have started YouTube channels, and a lot of people discussing, and this is the way the world is generally going. People producing their own media increasingly on social media channels. Some people directly onto X, formerly Twitter. Others using YouTube and Instagram, TikTok, which I'm not a fan of, the latter, but this is the way forward, and it's replacing what some refer to as the legacy media and the mainstream media, the formerly sort of top-down, organized and professional, but people accept the appeal to authority as a fallacy. And so just because someone is in a position of power doesn't necessarily mean that they have a better idea of what the truth is, of what the best things for you are, and they may very well have expertise on particular subjects, but that doesn't rule out that they may be influenced by all kinds of factors, monetary considerations. They may be editorially whipped, and in many cases, therefore, biased and unreliable. I think it's much better if people are, and we all have our own prejudice, we all have our own views, but it's better that we're all upfront and honest about that, rather than pretending to be some kind of impartial, objective commentators that we're not. So my interests, going back to what am I going to be presenting on, my interests are predominantly, first of all, language, and specifically the manipulation of language, narrative formation, narrative control, propaganda, and censorship. How these come about, why they come about, and how they can be overcome. And I've really touched on that through the decentralization and the democratization, really, of media. And I've always believed very strongly in freedom of expression, freedom of speech, as a principle, not a completely unlimited principle, but as a very important principle, as an essential principle for a free and truly democratic and truly, participatory society. And I suppose the link to that is politics and culture. So I would say my political outlook is predicated on the principles of pragmatism, courage, responsibility, and identifying objective truth, which is sometimes, if we're honest with ourselves, quite difficult to pinpoint. We may think we have know the objective truth, but actually it can be buried, and many of us believe a great many things that actually have no basis in truth whatsoever. But I think the key is to try and get close to that truth. And I suppose in that sense, I take an enlightened perspective. Now, obviously, sometimes these principles, pragmatism, courage, responsibility, objective truth, identification, these principles conflict or overlap with each other. And then at that point, I have to take difficult decisions on what course of action to take. What carries greater weight? And that's not always easy. It's something akin to a metaphor I often use is walking a tightrope. And you can fall off either side of tightrope depending on which way you decide to go when those principles do conflict with each other. And a very precipitous fall if you make that mistake either way. Big interest of mine, and is a subject of well-being broadly, but more specifically diet and nutrition, exercise perhaps to a lesser extent, and tied into that fertility, and tied into that again, physical well-being, but we also have mental well-being and the negation of that mental disorder. So things like autism, ADHD, procrastination, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, negative self-regard and depression, etc., etc. And I suppose I'm looking at these particularly, obviously, partly from my own experience, partly from, again, talking with others, but predominantly from the male perspective. And again, I suppose the intersection of health, broadly speaking, with culture and politics and identity. So there's a lot of crossover, there's a lot of intersection between these different topics, and that's something I really want to explore and really want to talk about these things, actually, as much as trying to help others through sharing the knowledge that I've accumulated myself. And I know, many of these subjects have already been extensively covered by numerous channels and YouTube and elsewhere, and forums and discussions, but some of the crossovers between these subjects have been relatively neglected, it's fair to say. There's a lot I would like to talk about, for example, on the subject of sexuality and fertility, and the intersection of that with diet. And I think while there has been a great deal of discussion about the interplay between sort of diet and nutrition and fertility, and specifically gender orientated discussion, perhaps less so that taking into account sexuality or sexual orientation, and where subjects are relatively neglected. Because I think we live in a world now where pretty much everything is out there if you look hard enough on the web. The subjects that have been relatively neglected are generally because people have, I think, an aversion to uncomfortable truths. So if you take the Hegelian dialectic, if people are familiar with the German philosopher called George Hegel, seems to be talking about the thesis, antithesis, and synthesis in terms of critical discussion and conclusions stemming from those discussions and debates. More often, the synthesis of discussion arrives at a conclusion from, well, often from sort of political or social expediency, rather than a concern for what can often be evasive truth. And so I think the answer to that is just we need to be even more honest with ourselves, and we really need to not be careful to not shy away from having very honest discussions, not only with how others see the world, but how we see the world ourselves. So anyway, that's essentially what I'm going to be talking about, presenting on this channel. I will try and make it interesting. I will try and put in a bit of humor. I'll try and make it relatively light-hearted. I can steer a little bit into the academic side, and I don't want it to become too esoteric, too inaccessible. But at the same time, I think it has to be to an extent, because you're talking about sometimes some fairly overlapping subjects. But I want to try and make it a bit fun. I will try and also bring in some graphics and photo editing. I'm quite new to all of that, but how that goes. But anyway, thank you. Thanks for watching, and welcome again to The Reasoned Heretic, as this channel is now going to be called.